Schießen!
Spread out. Hourman, you and Jay with me on the ground. Carter, you and Dinah take the sky.
Me and my big mouth. Okay, let me explain. I haven't released an episode of the Diana Prince podcast since 2022, and that one only happened because of a long Wonder Woman tangent with a guest while recording for another podcast. I'd planned to do a series of podcasts called Year of the Cheetah in 2020, but I only got 2 episodes deep because I got bogged down in technical issues trying to record audio from old Challenge of the Super Friends episodes. I'd also read ahead through all of the Debbie Domain Cheetah appearances, as well as the full run of Cobra comics, which tied into her material. But I didn't write up or record any of it, because I was waiting to do the animated Priscilla Rich appearances, and all the research went cold in my mind. Plus, the whole reason that I was doing Year of the Cheetah was to tie into the belated release of the movie Wonder Woman 1984, which everybody hated. I liked it better than most. And it seemed to me the last best chance of moving away from the sword-wielding Amazon that I loathe and has been the default version of the heroine since the New 52, where a lot of my fandom of Wonder Woman over the years had revolved around defending and promoting her. With the success of the 2017 feature film, I felt that she didn't need me anymore. Wonder Woman had sustained well-received and good-selling series for a while at that point, and the movie secured her a new generation of young female fans. At the same time, it was the mythology-heavy interpretation of the character that has always bored me, and a more militant interpretation of the Amazons that I find runs contrary to the spirit in which the Marston characters were created. So on top of my services no longer being needed, I didn't actually like the Wonder Woman that the world had embraced all that much. Plus, I'm disenfranchised from the DC universe. I'm sick of doing free work promoting corporate comics, and I'm pretty burnt out on podcasting in general. So this show pod faded, then Angela's Warrior for Peace followed suit in 2022, and now there's a couple of other shows that have arisen to replace us. Terry and Ed Moore's Diana Prince Secret Agent podcast is doing the deep Howard 60s material that I derived the show's name from, and have a lot of affection for, but never got around to addressing anywhere. Meanwhile, Sean Ross is recanvassing the George Perez material that Angela almost got all the way through. And it's still too soon after Perez's passing for me to talk about how much I've come to resent that run. What I can't resist, though, is when my friends do podcast crossovers. If someone I know wants to cover events like Eclipso or Underworld Unleashed, my first thought is to figure out what properties I have an interest in that allows me to participate in their grand scheme. And it's usually the irredeemable Shag's fault. This year, for instance, he replaced JL May, which I usually engage with from a Martian Manhunt angle, with JSApril, Wonder Woman being my most obvious entry point. While I could have done anything Wonder Woman related here because her being a Justice Society of America member is all the credentials needed. For instance, Sean and Paul Kien covered the 1978 Wonder Woman Spectacular, which I've been meaning to get around to for years, and the key qualifier there was that it was an Earth II World War II story. But no, I wanted to delve into the JSA angle, and while I've read my share of Golden Age Wonder Woman material, I really don't have any of her JSA adventures. Likewise, Angela touched on the amazing Amazon stories and anthologies like Sensation and Comic Cavalcade, but if she did the JSA stuff, I've forgotten in the blur of her doing at least 3 eras and a TV show episode in each of her releases. Most importantly, though, I was going to cheat. Back in the 80s, there was a publisher called Independent Comics Group, or ICG, that had close ties to Eclipse Comics. In those pre-internet days, they cut a deal with DC Comics to do color indexes of various properties, like the Justice League, Teen Titans, and Legion of Superheroes. They used to be quarter-bin staples, and I have a few of them. I remembered that they did a JSA volume, so I went looking for that with the intention of basically reading through it with some added personal notes. Unfortunately, the All Star Index only released a single issue. Further, That issue only covered the first 4 issues of All Star Comics, meaning just 2 JSA stories, neither of which included Wonder Woman. The indexing doesn't even start until page 21 of 32. The rest is editorial material from the likes of Roy Thomas. There was a lengthy all-text overview of JSA history, but that added another wrinkle. You see, this book came out in 1987 with an eye toward preserving Earth 2 history following its eradication during Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this history borrowed heavily from 1977's DC Special Number 29, the first ever origin story for the Justice Society, as well as 1981's All-Star Squadron ongoing series. All of that was retroactive continuity created within my lifetime about a multiverse that I didn't want to address. I specifically promised to cover the Golden Age appearances of Wonder Woman in JSA stories, not this gilded boomer retcon crap. Undaunted, I sought out an even earlier index, 1977's All Star Comics Revue. Even then, this glossy magazine cost $4.95, and it set me back a few dozen dollars today. It touted itself as an update of an index done by the legendary fanboy Jerry Bales, with 80-some-odd pages of material. Mostly useless material, I found out. The book is preoccupied with stats and minutiae. Which issues featured Johnny Thunder, who were honorary member or chairman, and over which issues did they serve. Then elusive best guess creator credits. Lists of backup features, contests, and real science segments. Which issues of Justice League of America had JSA team-ups. 12 pages of scans of decoder keys and fan club membership kits. The kind of stuff any decent indexing site has readily available at a glance. As for the story indexing, the title and a description short enough to be a haiku. Here's the write-up for All-Star number 12. The Justice Battalion defeats a Japanese spy ring. I mean, I'll still use them, but I'm clearly going to have to do most of the work. By the way, I initially figured there couldn't be that many Wonder Woman appearances here. Batman and Superman were in, 1.5 issues. Wonder Woman is there through the final Golden Age JSA story in 1951, issue number 57, and even if you take out her time as an honorary member and secretary, that's still nearly 40 issues. I guess me and my big mouth better get to work, then.
Back in 1940, 8 sensational heroes united to create the world's very first superhero team, the Justice Society of America. Now, 85 years later, we're gathering podcasters and bloggers from around the globe for a month-long celebration in an event we're calling JSApril. Throughout April 2025, join dozens of content creators as they each share their own unique tributes to the original and greatest superhero team, including all-star podcasters and bloggers like
Justice Society presents
the Longbox Crusade podcast,
Campus Comics Cast,
Supergirl Comic Box Commentary,
the Quarter Bin podcast,
The Bat Pod,
the Earth 2 podcast,
FW Team Up,
Diana Prince is the new Wonder Woman,
Fanholes podcast,
Back to the Bins,
Coffee and Comics,
the Huntress podcast,
*51.blogspot.com,
Justice Society Origins, a part of John Reed's Comics,
DC Specialcast,
Between the Pages blog,
The Outcasters, a Batman and the Outsiders podcast,
A World on Fire, an All-Star Squadron podcast,
JLA Stories and Friends,
The Monitor Tapes,
a Crisis on Infinite Earths podcast,
Lords of Order, a DC's Dr. Fate fan podcast,
David M. Gallagher at Medium.com,
JSA in the 90s,
Justice League Legacies,
DC Secret Files podcast,
Mike's Geek World,
Pop Culture Affidavit,
the Source Material Comics podcast,
That Giffen Show,
Worst Collection Ever,
The Fantastic Four.
It all comes back to Superman.
And that's just some of the podcasters and bloggers who'll be joining in the celebration. Get ready for a thrilling month of beloved characters, fascinating insights, and incredible stories. Follow the action on social media with the hashtag JSApril, and visit our website for a complete list of participating podcasters, bloggers, and what they're each covering at fireandwaterpodcast.com/JSApril.
Excerpt from ICG's The All Star Index, written by Lou Mugen. For those of us who live in a world where JSA and JLA alike are merely comic book characters, it happened like this. The Justice Society of America debuted in All Star Comics number 3, the creation of editor Sheldon Meyer and writer Gardner Fox. What the exact creative spark was remains unknown, but heroes from other titles had been appearing in solo strips in the first 2 issues of All Star Comics, so combining them into a team may simply have been the next logical step. Since the first JSA story merely consisted of the heroes meeting for dinner and swapping yarns from their recent exploits, it is likely that the stories of the individual heroes were originally intended as solo outings, and were redrawn slightly to make them fit into a combined narrative. The team's origin was not told in that story, nor in any issue of the original run of All Star Comics. That tale had to wait 37 years to be told, in the pages of DC Special number 29, which related how America's mystery men were called together to thwart Hitler's attempted invasion of Britain. This was the Justice Society's first continuity implant, as it related an untold story of their wartime adventures, a practice since continued in All Star Squadron and Young All Stars. The original roster of the Justice Society included 2 characters each from 4 of DC Comics' anthology books: the Flash and Hawkman from Flash Comics, the Green Lantern and the Atom from All American Comics, the Sandman and Hourman from Adventure Comics, and the Spectre and Dr. Fate from More Fun Comics. Mentioned but absent from the outset were Superman and Batman, who were already appearing in their own quarterly comics besides the monthly Action Comics and Detective Comics, thus establishing the policy that heroes popular enough to be awarded their own comic books would be honorary, non-attending members of the JSA. Despite these formalities, the group's first meeting was crashed first by Johnny Thunder, that least serious denizen of Flash Comics, and then by the original Red Tornado, the comical crusader from the Scribbly strip in All American Comics, who made no other JSA appearances. Johnny, however, continued to hang around with the team until he was made an official member in issue number 6, as the Flash was awarded his own title, All Flash. Flash thus had to be replaced in the roster by another character from Flash Comics, as well as being succeeded as chairman by Green Lantern. GL only held the gavel for 1 issue, though, as he too was voted his own comic, replaced in the JSA by fellow All-American hero Dr. Midnight, and handed over the chairmanship duties to Hawkman. At the same time, Hourman took what turned out to be a permanent leave of absence, and was replaced by another Adventure Comics hero, Starman. Here the formula gave way, however, as Hawkman failed to graduate to his own title, and thus remained to preside over every JSA meeting for the remainder of the series. All Star Comics number 8 was a most unusual issue on more than one count. Not only did the JSA lineup change and the chairmanship change hands, but the Justice Society also guest starred in the Hop Harrigan text feature. Curiously, the entire roster of the JSA appeared in this minor adventure, including all 4 honorary members, Superman, Batman, Flash, and Green Lantern. Also in the same issue was a special feature, the first appearance and origin of Wonder Woman, which for some reason was published here rather than in Sensation Comics, the title in which she was to become the lead feature.
Now, of course, Wonder Woman's first appearance and origin were in All Star Comics number 8, and I did a long write-up of it for my blog 15 freaking years ago. I could be pedantic and derail this whole thing right off the bat, but that would just be depriving myself of low-effort content if I ever do another episode of this show again. I would be the victim here.
Excerpt from the membership of the Justice Society of America by Lou Mugen. Since ancient times, an island within the Bermuda Triangle has been populated solely by a race of mighty women called the Amazons. They are the devoted followers of the goddess Aphrodite, and were always victorious in battle, thanks in part to the magic girdle worn by their queen, Hippolyte. When Hercules briefly tricked her into giving up the girdle, and thus took the Amazons into slavery, Aphrodite gave them the strength to triumph over their captors, on the condition that they must forever wear slave bracelets to remind them of their captivity. Later, Hippolyte carved a statue of a baby girl and wished that it were alive, a wish that was granted by Aphrodite. The queen named the child Diana, and raised her as her daughter, marveling at the super strength and super speed she exhibited, which even exceeded that of the other Amazons. After Diana was grown to young womanhood, she witnessed the crash of an American airplane, and rescued its pilot, Captain Steve Trevor, from the wreckage. She nursed Captain Trevor back to health, and when Aphrodite ordered Hippolyte to send one of her Amazons to America to fight against the powers of Mars, Diana won a competition over her sister Amazons, and was granted the red, white, and blue costume of Wonder Woman. She soon returned Trevor to America, and gained a civilian identity when she posed as Nurse Diana Prince, with the latter's consent, while the real Prince went to South America to marry her fiancé. Wonder Woman was a member of the All Star Squadron before joining the Justice Society.
Suffice to say that as much as I'd rather the amazing Amazon have debuted in her own title, All Star was already a big success with a lot of eyeballs on it, and may have legitimized Wonder Woman in certain circles. If debuting an All Star helped in any way, it was worth it. That said, the most high-profile superheroine ever still faced challenges. That introduction was at the very back of the book, with no indication of her inclusion on the front or inside front cover. Despite that text piece being devoted to Dr. William Moulton Marston's role on the editorial advisory board on DC Comics. There's also a list of titles approved by this internal watchdog group of the Superman DC comic group that does not yet include Sensation Comics. That reveal was saved for the page after the Wonder Woman story, featuring the first cover and the assurance that the 5 additional features in that anthology were all men. In fact, 2 of those men, the Wildcat and Mr. Terrific, would eventually join Wonder Woman as members of the Justice Society of America. But Wonder Woman wasn't quite a shoo-in yet.
Excerpt from ICG's The All Star Index, written by Lou Mugen. The original format of the JSA stories, which All Star Comics followed through its wartime years, included an introductory chapter in which the characters appeared together and were informed of the task that lay before them, a number of solo chapters featuring the individual heroes on their own, drawn by the regular artists, and a concluding chapter, in which the heroes banded together again to finally achieve their objective. The format was standard until the aforementioned shrinking page counts forced the creators to team the heroes in 2s or 3s, and only 3 chapters appeared per story. The scripter of the first 32 Justice Society stories was Gardner Fox, who created The Wizard and Brainwave, among others, and was famed for his moralistic stories, pitting the JSA against social and religious prejudice, teaming them up with handicapped youngsters, and pointing out the importance of the war effort. His immediate successor was John Broome, who scripted issues 35 and 39 through 57, and who specialized in science fiction menaces. Robert Kanigher wrote All Star Comics number 36 through 38, scripting the only prominent appearances of Superman and Batman in the original run, and creating the JSA's evil counterpart, the Injustice Society of the World. Mention must also be made to the artists who contributed to the 55 JSA stories in the Golden Age. Too many of them were involved to give a detailed description of the contribution of each, but many fine pencil and brush wielders graced the All-Star pages, including Jack Burnley, Jack Kirby, Joe Simon, Martin Odell, Sheldon Moldoff, Harry G. Peter, Alex Toth, Joe Kubert, Carmine Infantino, and Erwin Hasen.
All Star Comics number 9 closed out with another ad for Sensation Comics, announcing that DC's big 7 titles were now joined by an 8th in claiming to be tops in monthly comics magazines. In advance of her 2nd issue, the sensational new character touted an endorsement from no less a macho figure than boxing champion Jack Dempsey. Trust that Sensation Comics was now getting listed on the inside front cover, but it was still Superman and Batman's headshots appearing randomly on covers or during stories that they otherwise took no part in, just to remind everyone that the JSA technically ran in their same circles. No such appeal for a Wonder Woman connection yet, but Sensation continued to figure into house ads for DC's big 8 titles. Sensation also got an additional solo house ad, adding another boxer's endorsement, though Gene Tunney doesn't ring the same bells nearly a century on. Tennis player Alice Marble was pictured as another co-signer, and there was an offer of one of 10,000 Wonder Woman buttons making the rounds. Now might be a good time to remind everyone that DC Comics was actually 2 publishing houses at the time. National Periodical Publications was founded by Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, but owned and run by Jack Leibovitz and Harry Dunenfeld, very much in that order. All American Publications was a side hustle founded by Max Gaines and bankrolled by Harry Dunenfeld, who helped connect the 2 companies. All American had some success, but they didn't have a Superman or a Batman, at least until Wonder Woman blew up. So all of a sudden, her headshot turns up on the cover, along with a cover billing, though admittedly last bill. Then on the first page of the story, her headshot is largest, centered below the JSA logo, and bedazzled on either side with stars, while a fairly bitter bunch of dude heads filled the margins of a text introduction. The JSA had just formed in the 3rd quarterly issue in winter 1940, and a year and a half later, faced its first major challenge. And I don't mean letting ladies in. The U.S. naval base Pearl Harbor had been bombed by the Japanese, and it was now every able-bodied man's expectation to join the armed forces to face down demonically racist depictions of Asians in uniform. Hawkman was the first member of the Justice Society to announce that he was enlisting, with only the undead Spectre legally required to abstain. Carter Hall was then the first solo story that we follow, but it turns out his partner Sherrera Sanders had also enlisted as a nurse. Eventually, Hawkman had to suit up to protect her convoy sailing to the Philippines, while Sherrera mooned over her separation from Carter with a fellow nurse, Diana Prince. You see, despite this big patriotic show from the boys, they were months late to the princess party. In Sensation Comics number 1, Wonder Woman had flown Captain Steve Trevor from Paradise Island back to the States for medical observation. Immediately, the amazing Amazon's appearance attracted attention. After a foiled robbery and automobile chase, Wonder Woman ended up earning money in a stage act. Princess Diana then met an army nurse named Diana Prince and paid for her to be reunited with her fella, as well as for her legal name and nursing credentials. Medical practice wasn't as heavily regulated back then, and Diana was well ahead of modern medicine, thanks to her training on the Isle of Healing. So yes, it's criminal fraud, but the rare good kind. Still rather naive in the ways of duplicity in our society, Nurse Prince initially took Shira as a two-timer over her being a little too enthusiastic about that shirtless Hawkman. On the other hand, the Winged Wonder immediately recognized Nurse Prince as Wonder Woman, since the Justice Society made a point of knowing such things. Hey Roy, where's the story that explains that detail? Anyway, Shira had to explain that Carter and Hawkman were the same guy. By the way, this story does an odd thing that I don't think I've seen before. The dialogue would have these internal monologue asides in parenthesis, instead of thought balloons. It reminded me of Kevin Nealon's old Saturday Night Live bit, Mr. Subliminal Man, who I think was in the All-Winner Squad. Clearly, these asides aren't meant to be spoken aloud, but that's how they're presented, which is probably why this thing didn't catch on. Shelley Moldoff drew the Hawkman sequence, and Sensation Comics was only 6 issues on, so for all I know and won't bother to research, he may be the first person to draw Diana Prince professionally after Harry G. Peter. However, HG does the Wonder Woman segment in this comic, where she battles Japanese soldiers in the Philippines. Gardner Fox is credited with the script, though from what I understand, likely noted to death by Marston. More on that later. I also have to point out that I was surprised by how nice and sometimes really obviously photo-referenced the Moldoff Hawkman pages were. But Peter's action in the Wonder Woman sequence blows away anything else in the issue. Peter was much older than most comic artists and came from a background of political and book illustration. He looks very out of sync with other period artists, often more crude, but he knew how to communicate well in every panel. If the script calls for Wonder Woman to run across a beach disarming Japanese troops, the Flash better hold on to his hubcap. The downside being that he's also a cut above at turning those Japanese into subhuman troll creatures. And yes, decades before Identity Crisis, she was necktying the Nipponese with nooses. Great Hera. Then she commandeers one of the planes and swings a whole tree at their troops. Pity poor Cliff Young and Ben Flinton having to follow this with reheated Kirby Sandman and the Al Pratt Atom. Dr. Fate, Dr. Midnight, Starman, and Johnny Thunder also get their turns, but I steadily lose interest the further we get from Diana. I guess Jack Burnley is the first to draw Wonder Woman in a JSA story, as she shows up for the wrap-up. The various commanding officers of the Army divisions bolstered by undercover JSA members argue amongst themselves as to which hero did the most good, and then the Navy shows up with the seemingly publicly known Private Thunder, who uses his Thunderbolt to call the other heroes together. It was decided that the heroes were too disruptive as individuals, so the Army chose to enlist them in a new Justice Battalion of America, a military equivalent to the JSA. Dr. Fate immediately requested that Wonder Woman should join them, which lifts his stock with me personally, while Johnny Thunder griped about his divided loyalties as a Navy man, making it all about himself. This is why we all hate Johnny Thunder. The next 2 promotional pages were dedicated to Sensation Comics and Wonder Woman. Her buttons were so popular that they had to put more into production, and patience in their arrival was requested. There was also a reader's poll as to who should join the JSA, and even though the publisher openly acknowledged that Wonder Woman was in the lead, the polls remained open at this date out of fairness. To the patriarchy, I guess? This is acknowledged on the second text page, that some had also expressed that a woman should not be permitted onto the Justice Society. I was going to make a political joke here, but even the most ancient elected officials mostly weren't born yet, and they're not worth killing positive vibes, even to take shots at their hateful asses. Sensation Comics was a monthly, so issues 7 through 8 came out in between the bi-monthly appearances in All Star Comics that continued into 12. Though still last billed on the cover like the very special guest star that she was, this was still the iconic cover where the JSA line up inside a V for victory. And Wonder Woman is at the central point of that V, the only member facing the audience, and her arms also form a V that links both divisions of the team. It might as well be a W, because we all know who the star is here. That said, the splash page lists current members and then honorary members Superman, The Flash, Batman, and Green Lantern. A few panels in, Hawkman literally brings Wonder Woman to the table, the JSA meeting table, that is, and announces that she's volunteered to serve as secretary. However, the caption above distinguishes that this meeting includes the Justice Society and the newly commissioned Justice Battalion. Spectres at the meeting. But I don't know to what degree the Society and the Battalion are distinct entities, and which Wonder Woman serves as secretary. Domestically, 8 inventors have been kidnapped by the Japanese Black Dragon Society, and the army asks Hawkman to intervene. Wonder Woman states, "I'm not a regular member of your battalion, Hawkman. I'll remain at Washington to handle any emergencies that might arise." A few panels later, Wonder Woman's lovely eyes look up wistfully as she wishes she could join the boys in their adventure. But, she doesn't. So, why isn't she part of the Justice Battalion, and whose decision was that? The Spectre's on this mission, but he's not active military. Is it a Justice Battalion mission or a Justice Society one? And why does it seemingly preclude Wonder Woman's involvement either way? At least some clarity comes at the back of the issue. Once again, Wonder Woman's headshot is surrounded by the JSAers. Of all the Sensation Comics features, Wonder Woman was chosen as its representative to the Justice Society. Yes, the consensus was that the amazing Amazon should be allowed to serve on the team. And also, it was decided that like Superman, Batman, The Flash, and Green Lantern, Wonder Woman deserved her own solo title to be released as soon as possible. All 4 of those heroes' grinning headshots filled the corners of the house ad for Wonder Woman #1. To quote, "Here it is, boys and girls, the first issue of Wonder Woman. In less than a year, one of the leading comic book characters of America. You'll love her more than ever in these new never-before-published episodes. Another fit companion to the other honorary members of the Justice Society." So even if the stories were playing it coy, the marketing couldn't have been clearer. Now we had 2 Sensation Comics issues and a quarterly Wonder Woman debut until All Star Comics #13, with another final bill on the cover roll call. And Diana centered in the image of the JSA watching rockets fly through space. The same image is repeated on the splash, with the notation in the caption the Society was working as the Justice Battalion, and that Wonder Woman was listed between the active members and the honorary ones, as simply Secretary. Likewise, midway through the book is an ad for the Junior Justice Society of America, essentially their fan club. The mostly useless All Star Comics Revue magazine shows off the junior swag, including a certificate of admission undersigned by Diana Prince. There was a police-style metal badge, and a bunch of character-specific decoder wheels. If you read DC titles, the inside front covers had secret messages attributed to various heroes, and you had to know their specific code to decipher it. Drink more Ovaltine, y'all. Anyway, the ad was a variation of the previous announcement pages, with male JSAers flanking the page, Wonder Woman at bottom center, and at a quarter of their size. The 4 honorary member headshots at the corners of another caption. Again, Wonder Woman is a star, but not a big enough one to skip out of direct JSA involvement, and also othered from the normal members with external genitals. Back to the linking story, Adolf Hitler himself shows up with a plot that sees the justice. Whatevers get launched into outer space in individual rockets to different extraterrestrial bodies so that the Nazis don't have to deal with them anymore. I'd ask if that was still an option, but the rockets would come from SpaceX, so pieces of me would be mixed into the wreckage raining down over the Gulf of Mexico. Real Nazis have plenty of black marks on their history, but at least their rockets could get Wonder Woman safely to Venus. Shanghaied into space was another Gardner Fox story, but the Wonder Woman creative team reworked her segment so much as to make it indistinguishable from her solo series. The tale introduces Queen Desira, ruler of the winged women of Venus, and also the flightless second-class citizen males. See, the men are all pretty boys in gay apparel who live to please the women that could fly away from them to other worlds if they so wished. Diana even comments, "What a wonderful way to keep men in their place." Golden Age Wonder Woman was unambiguously a female, supremacist text. It is not without its controversy. Anyway, These hulking brutish men were riding the meteor Coma Sola when it crashed onto Venus, and they began kidnapping the local boys to man them up or something. The goddess Aphrodite had guided Diana's rocket to this planet to help bring back the love to Venus, meaning that after some light bondage, Wonder Woman had to batter these dudes into loving submission, as she do. William Moulton Marston must have been particularly enamored with this, since Venus was revisited in at least 5 other Golden Age Wonder Woman stories across her 2 titles and in modern times. Queen Desira turned up in the Earth 1 graphic novel trilogy. Which reminds me, Odell Abner Dracula made me record on those for something like an hour each, so this won't be the last episode of this podcast after all. Look for part 1 in 2032. Fox and Jack Burnley did the final 2 pages following the story and wrapped up the framing narrative. Most of the male JSAers were arguing about who had the wildest interplanetary antics, with Diana simply stating, "Then it wasn't just me who had some adventures." Because if you read crazy-ass Wonder Woman stories from this time period, this was just a Tuesday for her. Sandman followed with, "You should have been on your anus." Phew, what a place. I wonder if Human Resources is under the supervision of the team secretary? Wesley is clearly not doing well without Diane, but we'll also get to that later. An FBI tip leads the Justice Battalion to the agents responsible for their rocket trips, and Wonder Woman joins the boys in delivering a beatdown. An hour later, at battalion headquarters, Hawkman announces, "Wonder Woman, the members of the Justice Battalion feel that, even though you're now an honorary member, we'd like you to act as our secretary." Diana claims it's an honor, but I have questions. Does that mean that she was the secretary to the JSA, but then she got honorary status, yet she now has to work as the battalion secretary? Or maybe the other way around. And I still don't understand what the functional difference is between the society and the battalion, especially when the battalion keeps having domestic, non-military adventures with non-serving members. And what does it mean to be an honorary member on either team? It seemed to mean former members in good standing and luminaries who occasionally pitched in, but Diana is an active member joining current missions. Even the book doesn't understand it, because that caption points out that, for the first time, an honorary member remains on active duty with the Justice Society of America. And the team sings for "She's a Jolly Good Fellow." But which team, the society or the battalion that was otherwise referenced throughout the story? What is, but why?
Can I get a tall chai?
And a large black coffee.
And I suppose you're here with no agenda, as per usual?
On the contrary, I'm here for comics.
I think I can help all of you. Hello, I'm the caffeinated Clinton Robinson, and I host a podcast called Coffee and Comics. On this podcast, I summarize, review, and discuss comic book issues, stories, and related media, usually in the span of time it takes to have a cup of coffee. Sometimes I'm joined by a guest, and sometimes I'm flying solo. So pour the coffee, take a sip, and turn up the volume as you listen to the Coffee and Comics Podcast. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, and directly on coffeeandcomicspodcast.blogspot.com. And remember, this is where the comics are never too old and the coffee is never too cold.
The next new member was also the next to attain a comic of her own, as Wonder Woman joined the group and graduated to honorary status at the same time, perhaps feeling a bit awkward about kicking their first staff member upstairs when they had only just welcomed her into the group. The JSA voted her their permanent secretary.
I'm using Mike's Amazing World of Comics Wonder Woman of Earth 2 chronology for this episode, which means I've had to skip covering pretty much the entire run of All Star Squadron and a bunch of Silver Age Wonder Woman issues to keep this coverage retcon-free. On top of all that, the gap between All Star Comics issues now includes just about the entire run of Earth 2 stories from a couple years' worth of mid-70s Wonder Woman comics that tied into the first season of the TV show, plus her strip in World's Finest Comics from that time, the Superman vs. Wonder Woman Treasury Edition Angela and I covered with Rob Kelly on Treasury Cast years ago. The DC Special Series number 9 that Sean Ross and Paul Kien just covered, plus the 2 contemporaneous issues of Sensation Comics and the second issue of Wonder Woman. Sufferin' Sappho. Wonder Woman is second only to Hawkman in running across occupied Europe with a cornucopia providing food for starving patriots. The cover is repeated on the splash, with a roll call concluding with, "And as Secretary to the Justice Society, Wonder Woman." I'm still trying to see it as a Secretary of State type secretary, but they're adding a hyphen between the Wonder and Woman makes it seem more like a "Mom only drove us here" sort of accompaniment. At the JSA meeting, she's even the one speaking up for the children in Hawkman's proposed mission to get fast-growing but currently microscopic shrunken food supplies to our allies in Europe. However, that's all she contributes, as her roles forces her to stay behind in the U.S. Look, she's fronting 2 titles of her own and is the only honorary to make the meetings. And most importantly, she stands with the JSA in her open contempt for Johnny Thunder, who at the end of the tale declares his own hunger and eats a mound of miniaturized Thanksgiving meals. You're a particular pet of mine, Johnny, so I'm going to let you in on a secret. Those food capsules have no food value without Hawkman's solution. Hurry, Johnny. In your condition, you're liable to starve to death. So Johnny drinks the solution straight from the beaker. The food resizes in his stomach, and he's agonized in the aftermath of his gluttony. Clearly, particular pet is Amazonian for bless your heart, and I have to think that the pet part in some way translates into you stupid animal. Comic Cavalcade #1 was another cover-featured anthology showcase for Wonder Woman. So that's 4 more comics with solo stories until All Star Comics #15's The Man Who Created Images. This would be the first appearance of the Brainwave, and another opportunity to make use of the Revue magazine.
Excerpt from 1977's All Star Comics Revue, presumably written by David L. Delich. In reality, Henry King, Brainwave, was a man who had complete control over his visual thought images, eventually mastering the ability to create and control anything by this process. In All Star #15, he captured the girlfriends of the JSA members, but apparently fell to his death.
The first Brainwave story has a unique angle. All of the JSA members are absent from the meeting but Wonder Woman, so she's reading their written accounts of solo encounters into the record. Procedural action as you like it. But there's also feministing, as Diana sees this as the opportunity of a lifetime for us girls. She rounds up all the girlfriends of the Justice Society members for their own meeting, and even has the ladies wear their Bose costumes. There are some I'm really not familiar with, like Doris Lee, who's fridging sent Starman to a psyche ward in a retcon. There's also some that skeeve me out, like Peachy Pet, Johnny Thunder's literal girl space friend, a little brat that he supposedly adopted. Anyway, the gals dip out while the boys' solo stories kick in, and I've been meaning to mention that the art really fell off on this book after the war started. There were some nice-looking stories a few issues back, but those guys must have gotten drafted or otherwise left, because this stuff gets rough. We get back to the JSA Women's Auxiliary in the final 5 pages, with passable art by Joe Gallagher. Before they can even confront the Brainwave, they are swiftly captured by the JSA, or so it seems. The JSA were actually an illusion, but then the real one arrives, and Brainwave is so scared, he seems to run right out a window to fall to his death. Now, Wonder Woman did realize beforehand that she could not be bound and depowered by an illusion of a man's hand, and proceeded to break out her fellow females. But it's still not a swell showing on their part. During the break until All Star Comics #16, Sensation Comics overtakes its issue count, and there's a 4th solo Wonder Woman issue. The Justice Society Fights for a United America offers another iconic cover, with Hawkman and Wonder Woman at the center of a spotlight, surrounded by other JSA members, and then a few dozen servicemen in the shadows. There's another splash featuring various American workers, surrounded by new JSA headshots. Wonder Woman's is centered but smaller, at the same scale as other pictured honorary members in what looks to be recycled shots. This meeting is to discuss the racial and religious intolerance of the hard right forces wreaking havoc in Europe, and also hawk the Junior Justice Society membership kits and story. After a bunch of solo tales, the Justice Society gather at an assembly hall to help sell war bonds and preach social bonds. The Sandman declares Polish, Irish, or Italian, Catholic, Protestant, or Jew, black or white, rich or poor. An American is still an American, Adam added, and always will be as long as he lives by the laws of our Constitution. What a pair of wokesters. We all know that what made America great was in focusing as narrowly as possible on who qualifies as a person, and then brutalizing and exploiting anyone outside that group. Clearly, these so-called heroes are too preoccupied in frivolous notions like justice and society, and even America, since we'd be better off as Russians, right? But just listen to Wonder Woman, the JSA, and a bunch of diversity hires all speak in unison. We are all Americans, regardless of race or religion. Some of us were born in America, some in Europe, some in Asia, some in Africa, but now we're here and we shall fight on until the evil forces that have disrupted our homes and lives and spread a pall of smoke and flame and blood across the lands of the United Nations shall perish forever from this earth. Now, doesn't that just make you sick? Someone should call ICE to deport the lot of them. Clearly, they're the wrong-headed, immoral bad guys here. 3 sensations, a Wonder Woman, and a comic cavalcade later. All Star Comics number 17 offered. The brainwave goes berserk. The cover had the JSA running in the shadow of a giant foot wearing spiked sandals, and for once Wonder Woman was at the heel instead of the fore. In the splash page, Princess Diana declared that the minutes of all past Justice Society meetings have been stolen. The team tears the meeting room up looking for them, and failing that, Wonder Woman goes home to see if she left them there. While she was out, the Justice Society was shrunk by Brainwave, whose muumuu had caught on an overhang when he was supposed to have fallen to his death. Then the JSA have a bunch of solo adventures at action figure size, and when the Thunderbolt asks Johnny why he's small, the idiot figures out his genie could just restore the Justice Society to normal size. Brainwave then accidentally blew himself up, and while I have no intention of reading all 50 pages of this Drek, I don't think the meeting minutes ever come into play. What would make sense was that Brainwave uncovered the minutes and got the formula Hawkman used to shrink the food in number 14 to use against the JSA. From a skim, it just looks like a guy with illusion powers invented a shrink ray, and the minutes were just an excuse to make Wonder Woman look incompetent and get rid of her. 3 more sensations, a Wonder Woman, and a comic cavalcade later. Insects Turn to Crime comes to All Star Comics number 18. Yet again, Hawkman and Wonder Woman are foreground as they're caught in the dripping goo of giant bugs. This despite the secretary unceremoniously exiting a few pages in after a single line of dialogue. That extra comic cavalcade story per quarter seems to have eaten up all of Wonder Woman's time. She's playing a piano on the cover to All Star Comics number 19. Inside, she figured out that Hawkman had gone missing and insisted the JSA follow a series of clues that began with sheet music but otherwise sends the boys out on that errand. We do learn that she keeps all the members' fingerprints on file, maybe on an ask from Batman? There's a write-up in the review for the villain of All Star Comics number 20, but Wonder Woman is only present for the initial meeting with no dialogue. She literally has more to do in an advertisement strip later in the book, where she holds a meeting with the Society on Infantile Paralysis. She requests that the Junior Justice Society send 15 cents in support of President Roosevelt's birthday ball and the March of Dimes in their work to put down this scourge.
The monster was a Jekyll and Hyde type of criminal and was actually a twin of Jason L. Roberts, a big industrial magnate. However, the monster has no body, just a mind, and in All-Star number 20, he attempted to destroy Roberts financially and drive him insane so that he could permanently occupy Roberts' body. The JSA, after slowly piecing all the clues together, discovered that Roberts and the monster were one and the same, and after a titanic battle, the monster accidentally destroyed himself with a ray gun.
You may ask yourself, why isn't Wonder Woman contributing to these stories? Paul Keene offered a rationale in his DC Special Cast episode. He said that, basically, William Moulton Marston was too controlling of the property for editorial's taste, so to avoid any more notes and ground-up rewrites, they just used Wonder Woman as little as possible for the visibility. I'm sure they would have done the same with Superman and Batman if National had allowed it, but they got away with it on Wonder Woman because she was an in-house character. Summer's 21st issue of All Star Comics made it clear that we were in 1944 with that year taking up a good chunk of the cover. Somebody put baby in the corner, as Wonder Woman was back and off to one side, as the JSA stood over the hospital bed of the man who relived his life. Wonder Woman tells the team that they got a telegram from the president requesting their help at Memorial Hospital. She travels there with them, and that's it. Captain Tootsie is getting more action on the back cover advertainment strips. Another iconic cover to All Star number 22, as Hawkman carries an American flag, Wonder Woman to his right, and the whole team running behind while saluting, the spirits of Jefferson and Lincoln looking on. Inside is another lesson on tolerance, as a fairy sends the society members to various points in time to combat prejudice or whatnot. Wonder Woman isn't in this one until the last pages, where she joins the team in a lecture hall full of children to salute while reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. The pre-McCarthy version, without the reference to a god that she wouldn't worship. She adds, "You know what that means, liberty and justice for all regardless of race, color, or religion." Because Wonder Woman is woke, and the Justice Society is woke. And they were woke before you were born, and before your parents were born. If you're not woke, why are you choosing to stay asleep and hate those who are awake? Wonder Woman was front and center of an all-star lineup in a billboard on the cover of the only issue of the big all-American comic book, 128 pages for a quarter. And that iconic cover where a kid looks up at the lineup and just says, wow. Alex Ross did a really nice homage to that cover after 9/11, where it's Superman looking up at a billboard full of first responders. Anyway, that must have eaten up Diana's allotment of pages that quarter, because she skipped All Star Comics number 23 entirely. Covers to her 3 other ongoing series are among the 10 books featured in a house ad, though. She's on the cover to spring 1945's All Star Comics number 24, where the JSA sit in a balcony while watching a newsreel that announces, "This is our enemy." It features fascists across the ages, from Nazis to Huns. See, the Justice Society are anti-fascists, and the message is so important to them that the Flash and Green Lantern are seated with them for the presentation, as is the Wildcat and Mr. Terrific, visiting from Sensation Comics. They'd all been asked by Hawkman to take part in a special case, convincing an isolationist, dill-hole Nazi apologist that there were Nazis needing punching. They even brought back that fairy lady called the Conscience of Man, so that the dill-hole could be sent to various points in time to learn that the Germans had always been jerks. Admittedly, then and now, you could do the same trip with the theme of European immigrants to the United States have always been jerks, but in 1945 the focal point of Nazis was still in Germany. It also bears repeating that comics were always woke, and they were at their most woke when they were selling millions of copies a month, so they probably aren't woke enough nowadays. Every hero in the All-American stable spends 39 pages, lecturing a proud boy until he relents. There's a bloodied and broken swastika with a missile headed for it in one panel. Wonder Woman presents a scroll with multi-point demands made of the German people to ensure that their worst impulses were forevermore suppressed as a formula for lasting peace. And after the war, the German people actually did all this stuff, reunified, and have been undisputed leaders in Europe and globally as a model society. So no, Hitler did not have even one single good idea. Shut up about Hitler already. Flash and Green Lantern were back in the roll call and had stories in All Star Comics number 25. Wonder Woman was still the secretary. She's a tiny figure on the cover. She's at the opening meeting and cradles an injured man's head in her lap. Then she's in Wonder Woman number 13, Comic Cavalcade number 11, and Sensation Comics numbers 44 through 46. She's doing you a favor as the 7th of 7 members menaced by a giant robot that looked like a car dealership air dancer on All Star Comics number 26. There's a Joe Kubert Hawkman story in here from when he was like 12, and it looks way better than most of these chumps still drawing the book. They just flipped the pretty lousy cover art for the splash. Diana barely has a line of dialogue, and we're on to All Star number 27. Diana's way in the background. Joining the society is saluting a serviceman who lost an arm in the war. She stands around during the meeting. The Wildcat's also at the meeting with dialogue and then a solo story. Is he a Justice Society member now? Yes, he's in the roll call, and the Chester Kozlik art on his strip joins Kubert in bringing up the quality on the title. Is he Sensation Comics representation in the book now? Nope, he's gone for All Star number 28. Diana takes down the minutes so fast that she's complimented by the Flash, no kidding, so she's barely there, but present regardless. The secretary continues to be technically present for All Star number 29, with a few inconsequential lines. Also present, a blackface humor strip. All Star number 30, Wonder Woman is credited as Seki, S-E-C', Y, rhymes with Sucky. Aside from the Kubert Hawkman, the art is back to wall-to-wall ugly. All Star number 31, Diana's barely on the repeated cover to Inside Splash and buys a stack of newspapers at the mental command of Who Cares. We're on to All Star number 32. On the repeated cover, notes that Johnny Thunder was exceptionally tardy. All Star number 33, at the center of a crystal ball full of JSAers that's being held by Solomon Grundy. Does this mean something? Not really.
Excerpt from 1977's All Star Comics Revue, presumably written by David L. Delich. Solomon Grundy was said to be Cyrus Gold, a man who had been murdered in Slaughter Swamp. Grundy was not really alive, but a distortion of nature, as bits of rotten wood and leaves somehow built themselves onto the skeleton of Gold. As a result, Grundy was a difficult opponent to subdue, especially for Green Lantern, whose power ring could not affect the macabre menace.
Diana's on a new splash page where the team is menaced by Grundy in a swamp. She notes the absence of Green Lantern at the meeting, and then Hawkman orders her to wait there in case Grundy returned. Everyone else took turns fighting Grundy, then they teamed up to shoot the swamp zombie into outer space. She shows up to say, "Well done, boys. The people of the world will be forever grateful." All Star Comics number 34, The Wiles of the Wizard in his debut. Wonder Woman kind of fights one of his manifestations, so I can justify filling time by reading his write-up in the review.
The Wizard. As with other criminals encountered by the JSA, the Wizard's true alter ego was never revealed. As a youth, he was a gunman and thus found himself behind bars quite often. But while in prison, the young boy realized that, to be successful, a criminal must learn new methods and angles. So when he was released, he went to Tibet and learned the complete art of hypnotism and astral projection, while learning about black magic on his own. In All Star number 34, he battled the JSA with feats of magic until, finally surrounded by the group, he jumped into a vat of acid and supposedly perished. However, he returned in All Star number 37, and again in number 41, as a member of the Injustice Gang. Yet he did not use any feats of black magic in either story, nor was any explanation given on how he survived his bath of acid.
All Star Comics number 35, the debut of Per Degaton. OMG, Diana does stuff. I can read his write-up too.
Per Degaton was a very intelligent, but somewhat erratic, assistant to Professor Z, who had invented a time machine. After stealing the machine in All Star number 35, Per Degaton applied the domino theory of time, going back to 331 BC with modern weapons and defeating Alexander the Great in battle. Presumably, without Alexander's conquest of the ancient world, progress would have been set back centuries, and the modern world would have been thrown into a dark age. The JSA travels back to aid Alexander, and all is set right. The time machine exploded, and Per Degaton found himself again working for the professor, mumbling about his dream for world conquest. Degaton returned in All Stars number 37 and 62. The pair was dropped for some reason, but had little success and was jailed by the JSA on both occasions.
This book came out around April 25th, 1947. William Moulton Marston passed away on May the 2nd, exactly 1 week later, after a period of illness that saw his significant others take over much of his writing work. The first Bob Kanier Wonder Woman story in Sensation was a month earlier. For The Day That Dropped Out of Time, Diana was front and center of the meeting, presenting her discovery of a stone tablet from Macedonia, and she translates it from ancient Greek as a message to the JSA. She then wheels out the magic sphere, the looking glass Queen Hippolyte used to view man's world from afar, on loan to help Diana provide exposition for this case. She's the one who determines that time has been altered and spearheads the investigation in the wraparound story, despite lacking her own solo tale. She and other members are in the solo Green Lantern story, where Alan Scott goes a decade into the future, where the society has been beaten down by constant persecution for refusing to bend the knee to Per Degaton. In the final story, she joins the society at the Battle of Arbela, where they help Alexander the Great and wipe Per Degaton's entire heel turn from history. Phew. I thought that I was about to have to do some serious reading again, but Superman and Batman are on the cover to All Star Comics number 36. They're marching against a city backdrop, flanked by Dr. Midnight, Wonder Woman, Hawkman, Green Lantern, and Flash, with Diana being one of 2 members holding banner flags with the names of the book and team. Since the First Among Equals honorary members actually showed up for once, their splash page headshots are twice as big as everyone else's, and Wonder Woman's is at the very bottom tier. But hey, the DC Trinity is lined up on the cover, and Wonder Woman does participate in the adventure, so this is the first time DC's biggest heroes work together. Because it's 1947, the JSA is still getting breaking news from newspapers. That's how they learn Al Pratt was injured in a basketball game, and the always nervy Johnny Thunder takes out a personal ad requesting Superman to take his place temporarily, since he had a cold. As it happened, the Man of Steel did read that request, and Bruce Wayne was at the hospital when the Atom needed an alternate, so that's how the world's finest duo finally made a meeting. Yes, that all took up more space than Wonder Woman gets in most JSA stories, and also yes, the menfolk leave the little lady behind while they investigate the case of the month. But at least Diana provides miniature mental radios from Paradise Island so that everyone can keep in contact. I'm not sure which plays odder, Superman and Batman getting solo stories in a JSA book, or how fully out of his depth Dr. Midnight is when every other featured character has their own titles. That was clearly Wonder Woman's solo slot, you guys. At least she gets a cameo at the end of all of their stories, as she calls the members back to headquarters for urgent news. In an interstitial, Wonder Woman explains that Green Lantern was the first member back to base, and it was what he discovered that had Diana call everyone else back. It's all a setup for the relaying of Alan's solo story, though, that led to a final group narrative, where Wonder Woman actually leaves headquarters and participates in a search. It's not much, but it's more than we usually get. The high-profile fill-ins would have been a lot more useful in All Star Comics number 37, the introduction of the Injustice Society of the World. Hey, I get to crack open the Revue magazine again.
The Injustice Society of the World was formed by the Wizard in All Star number 37 and included the Gambler, Brainwave, Vandal Savage, Degaton, and the Thinker in its membership. The members immediately declared war on the forces of law and order and vowed to wipe out truth and justice from the earth. Although the group put up a valiant fight, the JSA quickly overcame the group and placed them behind bars.
The, again, iconic cover has the Justice Society bound at the wrists to a wall, while the Injustice Society vandalize their headquarters and literally carve up a map of the US with daggers. It's a natural scenario to involve Wonder Woman in, and yes, I will be disappointed by how little she gets to do besides being in bondage, but this is still an exceptional story. There's a sense of a vast global conspiracy, where powerful figures unmask to reveal their long-disguised evil and turn viciously on all that is good and right. It felt like the days following Trump's second inauguration. 8-2, Tarjay. We spend a surprising amount of time on the villains having their meeting to plot, and the individual stories are far less episodic than usual. The stakes are so much higher than figuring out why a bunch of respected businessmen turned to crime. The story the world's finest were wasted on. Here, you have named villains executing a multi-pronged assault on democracy as our heroes struggle and fail to get off the back foot. All this while Wonder Woman and Johnny Thunder hold down the fort before being captured off-panel when they went to Capital City to help, only to be hit with a queer new ray and captured by Degaton, which we learn in dialogue. Oh, but let's not forget the amazing Amazon's key contribution, hawking memberships to the revived Junior Justice Society in a full-page ad. Picking back up, the JSA are all chained to one big metal ball, so they summon all their strength to swing it in unison, wrecking their prison. And by Hera, Diana is the first to manage to get her shackles off, as it should be. In fact, she's the one who frees everyone else, as this is her area of paramount expertise. Unfortunately, they're far from free, as the JSA runs right into a sham trial, presided over by the Thinker. Except it turns out that Green Lantern had beaten Thinker in his adventure, then taken his place at the trial. Most of the Injustice Society were in a jury box, which Wonder Woman picks up and tosses into a wall, which is probably the single most impressive thing that she'll do in this run. The only baddie to escape was the Wizard, but he's captured by a bunch of punk kids from the Junior Justice Society. Hey look, you know who is most responsible for signing them up. After all that, All Star Comics number 38 has a high bar to clear and it doesn't, but history's crime wave has its advantages. On the cover and repeated splash page, Diana is at the head of the society meeting table when they're overrun by some of the greatest villains of all time manifesting from a portal. Nero, Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, the Borgia, Goliath, and Captain Kidd. Yeah, they turn out to be fakes, but they let Brainwave into the Injustice Society, so there's some parody. More importantly, you'll recall that Johnny Thunder had no solo and no redemption last issue, and this issue, he appears to die. That would be a win right there, but the person who informs the JSA is none other than Black Canary. This issue started with individual stories, so no one shows up for the meeting except Wonder Woman, so she's the only one there to receive Canary. Two girls sharing pages together, and even starting their own investigation? I can't believe they didn't cancel the book right there and then. In fact, all of the male society members had been killed, leaving Wonder Woman alone to gather their bodies in one place. Then Wandy and Canary fly in the invisible plane to Paradise Island, to Paula's secret laboratory, where the team is revived by the purple healing ray. Without another thought or word of thanks, the reanimated heroes storm off to pursue their killers, who turn out to be wax figures at a museum. Stymied, they take advice from Black Canary, to whom Johnny spilled their secrets when he thought he was dying. Finally, Dr. Midnight acknowledges that without Canary and Wonder Woman, they'd all still be dead. Might have been nice for Wonder Woman to hear that, or for the team to have taken either heroine with them when they left Paradise Island. But in 1947, we'll take our feminist wins where we can find them. Black Canary helps break the case, figuring out that it was the crazy museum guard behind the scheme, and he dies in a very House of Wax way. Still, a dejected Black Canary left without being offered JSA membership, but in the end, Wonder Woman brings her into their next meeting as an honorary guest, with the expressed hope that she would eventually become a full member. Not only was this a fine moment of female solidarity, but also it more or less comes true. All Star Comics number 39 again features Canary as a guest star, when a case that she's on intersex with the JSA. Now, Wonder Woman is the one who brought the society into the case, and she for once joins them on it, and it's about freeing an imprisoned innocent woman, and Wonder Woman takes point on the case. So I'm sure it's just a coincidence that Black Canary somehow ends up joining them in a trip to Fairyland. The main antagonist is the villainous the Lorelei. Diana often functions as leader, and she beats up a bunch of mythological menaces. There's a deep investment in estrogen this ish. This was another pretty cool story, with a better integration of team elements than usual. Not to be rude, but Gardner Fox's last issue was number 34, the first wizard story. John Broome invented Perdegaton and gave us this fairy story. Robert Keniger wrote everything from the world's finest drop-in through the Injustice Society and the insertion of Black Canary. I just like the book better without Fox around. All that having been said, All Star Comics number 40 is a very special message episode on juvenile delinquency that mostly sidelines Wonder Woman, so I'm not enthused. The art by the likes of Alex Toth and Carmine Infantino helps, especially with Black Canary a full member and Johnny Thunder quietly dumped. I know that we're in 1948, but I'm thinking back to what a waste of space the Justice Battalion was. The book really didn't do much with the society as enlisted soldiers, so it just confused matters. Also, the main draft holdout was the Spectre, and I'm only just now realizing that he simply stopped appearing after number 23. Oh, hey, that was also Starman's last issue, and that was 2 issues more than Dr. Fate or Sandman got. Looking at the All Star Comics Revue roster, I see that we've seen all that we're going to see of Wildcat and Mr. Terrific. They weren't even real members, just guests invited to an intervention. Oh, look here, Hourman was only in the first 5 JSA stories, so I missed him entirely covering just the Wonder Woman stuff. Geez. How much of our perception of what the JSA was determined by JLA crossovers and the Bronze Age revival stuff? What even is the Justice Society, if so many people came and went? Wonder Woman's been present most of the time, but if she only hangs out at the headquarters taking notes, Mahunkle might as well have served as secretary. If you think about it, the Golden Age core is just Hawkman, Atom, GL, and Flash. That's a smaller nucleus than the Justice League, where only Aquaman and Martian Manhunter are treated as optional among the Magnificent Seven. Did all that distract you so that I can stop talking about juvenile gangs? Probably, but nevertheless, I persist. There's another nice moment with just Wonder Woman and Black Canary at headquarters, where it's clear that Diana is the one dispatching teams to various sites, indicating a leadership aspect to the position of secretary. Also, Diana wheels out the magic sphere again to show the boy gangs their probable future if they don't give up their lives of crime. More importantly, Hawkman has eye holes in this one, so it looks like he's wearing a plastic Kmart replica of his real mask. Was there Kmart in 1948? Does anyone under 40 know that a blue light special isn't some sort of a sex act?
2011, the Irredeemable Shag and Aqua Rob Kelly teamed up to create the Fire and Water podcast. In 2016, they teamed up with Ryan Daly, the Franklins, and Siskoid to form the Fire and Water Podcast Network. A network built on teaming up needs a show about team-ups.
Marvel Team Up.
Yes.
The Brave and the Bold?
You know it.
Marvel 2-in-1.
It's clobbering time.
DC Comics presents.
Of course.
Supervillain Team Up?
Good idea.
Youngblood X-Force?
Technically. FW Team Up, coming this summer, only from the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
It's been a minute since we checked the schedule, but it's still been 2 Sensation comics, a Wonder Woman, and a comic cavalcade until All Star Comics number 41. I'm also looking for any stray JSA appearances, but there are only Bronze Age retcons. The 5-year run of All-Star Squadron fit into the first 14 issues, and the last 70s Wonder Woman took place before number 28. There are no more post-war retcons until the narrative of the Society's disbanding gets picked up in 1979, so none of that stuff even made it into the Revue magazine. John Broome wanted a chance to do an Injustice Society, so now I get to read the entry for their second incarnation in the Revue.
The new Injustice Society of the World was formed in All-Star number 41 by the Wizard, who asked the Icicle, the Huntress, the Sportsmaster, the Fiddler, and the Harlequin to join the group. To select a new leader for the organization, a crime contest was planned and assignments were selected. While the Harlequin vowed to capture and destroy the Justice Society, the Wizard would steal the Liberty Train, the Huntress would nab Plymouth Rock, the Sportsmaster would commandeer Old Ironsides, the Icicle would snatch the Washington Monument, and the Fiddler would rob the city of Philadelphia of the Liberty Bell. Although the JSA fell captive to the Injustice Gang and were brainwashed by a machine invented by the Wizard, the Black Canary, with the help of the Harlequin, managed to free the members and place the Injustice Society in jail.
So, yeah, Wonder Woman was a zombie slave for much of the issue, but she does get to team up with Dr. Midnight in a segment where they confront the Fiddler. There was a moment when they were both trapped inside the Liberty Bell and gassed, but they survived by breathing fresh air through the crack. Oh, man. During the team segment, Amazon bracelets deflected bullets from the Huntress's rifle, helping to protect other JSAers. But of course it was Black Canary's showing that made the most difference, so Dr. Midnight moved to vote for her permanent membership status. Alan Scott concurred, and the motion appeared to pass. Given that Dinah Drake gave a speech about what it meant to her. The next page offered a fake newspaper headline to that effect, plus a Black Canary secret code to decipher. Worth noting that the House ad this issue promoted All-Star and Comic Cavalcade, but also Gangbusters and Mr. District Attorney. The JSA main stories have also been shrunk to make room for more comedy features for a while now. The age of the superheroes is waning. I don't think it ever occurred to me that the cover of Justice League of America number 6, with the team strapped to a spinning wheel while the villain looks on, was a swipe from All-Star Comics number 42. Some Peter Lorre-looking dude named Professor Zobar Zodiac tries to use alchemy to extend his life and gain power, or whatever. Wonder Woman and Black Canary team up again. And given what we learned about Dinah's string of team-ups with Starman back in the 60s, I'm starting to ask some saucy questions. The JSA eventually get turned into kid versions of themselves, but it doesn't take. You know, the Alchemist isn't a terrible villain, but I guess his look and lack of riz did him in. Also, I finally stopped confusing Hawkman for Hawkgirl in random panels, because he's now donned the yellow Lucador mask for the remainder of the Golden Age. The Atom gets his dumb Finhead costume here as well. Like I said before, the All Star Comics Revue really loved their itemized lists. There's 2 pages covering the names and creators of the various humor and true fact featurettes. Another outlines the details of contests run in the series. A little more than half a page goes to the titles of the various Johnny Peril surprise stories that ran as backups for most of the rest of the JSA's run in the title. Most surviving comics readers remember Johnny from his Who's Who entry, which made him look like a handsome and intrepid paranormal investigator. That was wildly misleading, as it's a bog-standard mystery adventure strip. It's mostly drawn by the just okay Howard Purcell, and I'm afraid Johnny hasn't the most handsome a visage, either. He's Dollar Tree Doc Savage with a busted face, is what I'm saying. The Revue offers a Joe Kubert headshot where he's got an Instagram filter on. On the way to All Star Comics number 43 were the usual two sensations, and bi-monthly copies of Wonder Woman and Comic Cavalcade. The initial excitement of the JSA stories taking on a more familiar team book format has faded, since it now feels like a dry run for lesser JLA efforts. Rather than dividing segments between artists, the stories are mostly all by Erwin Hassan now, and that's not exactly an aesthetic victory. The few pages per issue of Diana and Dinah pairing up to be defeated by the villain and disappear until the big showdown has gotten repetitive. This one involves other dimensional beings stealing gold to build giant robots. So, at least Wonder Woman gets some feats of strength in while walloping them. Mike Sikowski, again, kind of swiped this for his cover to Justice League of America number 52. On the way to All Star Comics number 44 were the usual two sensations and a Wonder Woman. Wait, did I just misplace another Spectre there? I'm afraid Comic Cavalcade radically altered its format with number 30 to all funny animals. One month was Wonder Woman, Flash, and Green Lantern. The next was the Fox and the Crow, Nutsy Squirrel, and the Dodo and the Frog. I have a small soft spot for Evil Star over Hollywood because it was reprinted in 1974's Justice League of America number 115. So it was one of the few stories from this period that I actually had access to. That was obviously truer of 70s kids because I could have bought an archive edition if I'd had the interest and scratch. I got the reprint in the late 90s as part of my Martian Manhunter collecting, but with Korg, the Last Angry God, as the lead story. Anywho, Evil Star got an entry in the review.
All Star number 44 presented the JSA's only case in Hollywood, and the group found themselves challenged by a cunning criminal known as Evil Star. Although Evil Star, in reality Guy Pompton, was portrayed to be the owner of a movie rental agency that supplied movie studios with relics and props to be used in movies, he secretly was the mysterious czar of the underworld, who attempted to prevent the filming of Thief in the Night, a movie that exposed him and his rackets. After a near brush with death, the JSA successfully placed Evil Star behind bars.
Wonder Woman got the chance to team up and get defeated with Hawkman, so that was a slight change of pace, but everything is otherwise to formula here. All Star Comics number 45. The Case of the Cosmic Criminals. Some crooks get superpowers. Diana and Carter Hall pair off again, with another display of bullets and bracelets. Black Canary is key to saving the day again. She's an MVP, for sure. Johnny Peril is still ugly, but at least he's tangling with a blue genie that I can't not read with a Robin Williams voice. DC's former top 8 titles now number 30, 12 of which are superheroes, for the time being. There's a house ad for Gangbusters, Boy Commandos, and Green Lantern, although it's Streak the Wonder Dog on the cover. All Star Comics number 46. The Adventure of the Invisible Band, less than a dozen issues to go, but I'm getting really tired, you guys. Much of Wonder Woman's dialogue continues to be positive reinforcement for her team members. She's paired with Dr. Midnight again, but it's been a while since that happened. Them bullets and bracelets. A klutz keeps messing things up for the team. Wonder Woman throws a pommel horse at a crook. Late life Mickey Rourke. Johnny Peril fights a ginger giant. Streak the Wonder Dog gives Cujo eyes while warning kids against jaywalking, but I'd be more worried about rabies here. All Star Comics number 47. The Ghost of Billy the Kid. I'm seriously rethinking my stated preference for John Broome over Gardner Fox. We're in a very post-Mosaic pre-Emerald twilight. Is this tedium ever going to end, period, for the Justice Society? I wanted Wonder Woman to participate in adventures, but not these adventures. Certainly not the Brady Bunch visit a dude ranch episode. Now I'm glad Wonder Woman does so little talking. Did you know Sam Spade had a radio show? There's a single-page advertainment strip here that sadly does not use Humphrey Bogart's likeness. Not that he would have been on the radio show. He was a top movie talent by 1949. What were we talking about?
Oh.
Flash joining the Wonder Midnight pair against cowpokes.
Sigh.
At least she grabs two horses by the tail, pulls them together, and it makes the cowboys bonk their heads instead of disfiguring the poor ponies. They're not the criminals here. Also, the heroes don't get knocked out this time. The alley-oop wannabe Rockhead McWizard is back for a multi-pager, depriving us of a Johnny Peril. So sad. Much missed. Not really. All Star Comics number 48. The Strange Lives of Edmund Blake. On Nuts, the cover is the JSA looking through the magic sphere to see Wonder Woman lassoing a Kinga. I hope I don't have to properly read this thing. Oh no, It's a Make-A-Wish Foundation type thing where they show a dying boy's scenes from the future. This won't be a depressing slog, no sir. It's another ladies' night pairing, I think. See, at least some of the issue of Magic Sphere predictions, so I'm not sure which things happen and which are just potential happenings. Anyway, the kid survives a risky procedure and helps save the Justice Society from mortal peril. But not Johnny Peril, who battles various shades of spear-chucking natives. Next, All Star Comics number 49. Pretty cover by Art Petty, spotlighting GL, Flash, and Wonder Woman. They're chiseling into a rock face a warning to future people about the arrival of a yellow comet, as a city burns in the background. Foreboding. Same artist on the inside isn't as nice, but still good to get a break from Hassan. There's another review entry.
The Fire People were inhabitants of a yellow comet that entered Earth's orbit once every 1 million years. Each time these beings came to Earth to secure large amounts of radium, a substance needed to maintain the high temperature of their comet world so that they could survive. Once securing the radium, the Fire People would then build a ship to take them back to their comet, and the blast-off triggered an atomic explosion which wiped out all earthly life. In All-Star number 49, the JSA were alerted to this danger and managed to force the comet beings to commit suicide with a radium gun rather than surrender.
Well, that was grim. Wonder Woman and Hawkman pair off to get beaten, but at least it's a more formidable foe. Johnny Peril is in a biplane, and then a car, and then a hospital bed with his head wrapped up. Who cares? All Star Comics number 50. Sensation Comics is bi-monthly by this point, as is Wonder Woman, so we're just cycling through an issue each of 3 titles on the same schedule. Too much talking to too many regular people in suits in professional settings involving overhead projectors, scientific theory, and prophecy. Wonder Woman finally pairs with the Flash. Just a couple more to complete the set, or have I already forgotten an Atom team-up? You wouldn't fault me for that, would you? They're beaten by a villain named Mr. Alpha, who is secretly a classmate of Jay Garrick's and hadn't. Interesting costume. I can't decide if it's good or bad, but I've never seen anything quite like it. Picture Wally-Wood redesigning Mr. Terrific, but in red, yellow, and blue-black. Factoring in the personal connection to Flash, I wonder why this guy never went anywhere. Also, there's this feature called JSA Laboratory Notes involving simple science experiments kids can do at home. There's 10 of them detailed in the Revue magazine. Wonder Woman hosts one on making a double convex lens out of ice. All Star Comics number 51. The cover is dominated by these big crystal beings bursting from the molten earth, with a heavily shadowed or otherwise obscured Alan and Carter treated as afterthoughts. That feels telling. Still on that Arthur Petty tip, which feels very 40s as that decade is passing into history. The heroes each is Wandy, Flash, and Canary, though she does spend a few panels blocking debris with the Atom. Diana saves the lot from falling down a giant hole. Once again, the Justice Society has to justify genocide when they destroy the civilization of these diamond people, but it was them or us, I guess. All Star Comics number 52. The numbering and the decade are now in the 50s. I have a headache. Hope this is over soon. Review synopsis reads, the JSA disappears for over a year while 4 kings of ancient super races plot to take over the world. Cool. We'll go with that. This feels like Joe Kelly Doug Mankey JLA. Not a compliment. I'm sick of villains dressed like theater kids. Tough to hold the society in high regard when they're in constant conflict with Mr. B, natural, and get beaten by them at least every other issue. Hawkman is the pairing partner. Johnny Peril climbs into a red proto-police box from 50,000 AD to tangle with Cybermen, but it somehow still looks totally boring. Let's keep it moving, people. All Star Comics number 53. Another cover with just Green Lantern and Hawkman. Keep in mind that Hawkman has never had a solo title, and Green Lantern's ended last year after he was kicked out by his own dog. Flash Comics was canned in 48, so Hawkman is homeless, same as Black Canary. Adam's last solo in Sensation Comics was that same year, while All American Comics went Western, stranding Dr. Midnight. There's only one character left in this book still carrying a solo feature in an anthology, much less serving as cover-featured attraction with an ongoing starring title as well. 36 DC titles listed on the inside frontpiece. 10 still carry superheroes. Wonder Woman is in 3 of them. The Amazon Princess goes on the covers, bruh. What's this story? The gun that dropped through time. Review synopsis reads, The JSA chased through 4 periods of the past in search for a murder weapon? Who's got bingo? All of those things sounds like things I've read about over and over again for 42 extra-length issues. Paired with Dr. Midnight. This one has Diana wrangle a whip from a dude, which reminds me how little she uses her lasso of truth in these stories. It's like how they had the bracelets for a run of issues, then forgot again. She's strong. She's sort of agile. That's what they use in JSA stories. The whole team is on the cover of All Star Comics number 54, taking part in the circus of 1,000 thrills. There are a lot of circus-based crime requiring a super team. Beyond jipping people out of Kewpie dolls with glued-down stacked cups, or using rings to narrow to go over a bowling pin. There are clowns, I guess?
Clowns freak some people out.
I personally feel that I have a tactical advantage over clowns, 'cause my shoes fit right. They've got reach and numbers, but if I have to flee, I don't think their cars have much pickup. The stunt cyclist is a lot more dangerous, and that's who Wandy and Midnight fight. Just to spite me, they use the bracelets and lasso here. JSApril visits a dude ranch. We already discussed this, and I most certainly did not sign up for the JSApril Dude Ranch episode. All Star Comics number 55, page 16 of my text document. When I do a comic reader resume episode, that translates into over 45 minutes of reading, probably closer to an hour. I'm so glad I committed to letting the fake lady robot read this. I still have a headache. The man who conquered the solar system. Guess what? He isn't a cool supervillain. On the last page of the All Star Comics Revue magazine synopses. Thank God. So, like, space stuff. The society has to build a rocket using only their powers and contemporary science that can get them a great distance. Sadly, a coal engine is involved, so that Amazonian strength can be flexed to feed it. At the destination, Diana punches some aliens and rips through a net, which is almost bondage, but not enough for the ghost of Marston to get off to. I may be getting a tad punchy. Why did I volunteer for this? Am I a masochist for putting myself through this process, or a sadist for inflicting the work product on others? Leave a comment on the blog. Hawkman is kind of the partner, but at this point the stories are too short yet cluttered to accommodate true chapter play. All Star Comics number 56. The Day the World Ended. If only. It's certainly how my weekend ended. Yes, I'm only skimming these things, but I gave up my whole weekend for this. Penultimate issue. Bear down. What is this? Another Hawkman Green Lantern cover with too much shadow leaning heavily into sci-fi horror? Look here, Mr. Editor Man. Sensation Comics will still star Wonder Woman for another year after this book ends, pivots to horror with a 1952 cover date, and will squeeze out 10 issues before folding in 53. Solo Wonder Woman will last until 1986. I'm over here waiting 7 pages through Little Green Men before you even start serving Justice Society. I'm over this. Cancel my subscription. I'll take the next one out of obligation to the social contract, but you keep the rest. Baby pairing with Flash. Adam gets the biggest feat of strength. Giant robots. Ray guns. Rocket ship. The future. Aliens. JSApril does some undersea kingdom stuff. What is this guy? Pick a lane. All Star Comics number 57, released at the end of 1950, dated 51, better than doubles the run as a Western title until 1961. Clearly someone liked all that time spent at the Dude Ranch. They got the memo and put a lassoing Wonder Woman prominently on the cover, alongside Green Lantern and the Atom. Even as the perspective is a back view of a gun-toting thug coming out of a manhole with a view of the Eiffel Tower. I call that ambition. Plus, this one has the one and only appearance of the Golden Age Key, only slightly less dorky looking than the Silver Age one, and he gets a review write-up.
Never identified by name, the Key was a mysterious rich man who is the mastermind of a far-flung criminal empire that stretched to every corner of the world. His criminal cohorts would always leave a silver skeleton key behind them after the commission of a crime as the signature of his organization. In All-Star number 57, the Key captured Drew Dawes, Jacques Durand, Mustafa Haken, and Harry Wan, 4 famous detectives right under the noses of the JSA. The group finally tracked down the Key, who committed suicide rather than face capture.
I've got to say, the Justice Society would struggle with YouTube monetization with all this and deadening. Oh, and those detectives I listed were analogs for Sherlock Holmes, Charlie Chan, Hercule Poirot, and, I dunno, Nero Wolfe. I'm not a mystery guy. Some PBS sponsor can chime in here. But is Wonder Woman a mystery gal? Depriving us of that elusive Alan Scott team-up. She goes it alone to work the case of the silver key thingamajig. And she does it in Istanbul because fezzes are exotic, and also they have the carpets there. Mucho carpet fan, that Princess Diana. Is this over yet? I'm so tired and also bored, and the headache never went away, and also my butt's sore from all the sitting to read and type. Robot plane. Gah. Now you want to do a Wonder Woman showcase? Diana tracks a car to an enemy submarine, which she lassos and pulls aground. Bullets and bracelets. She lifts the sub over her head and shakes the bad guys out. She doesn't even get beaten and plays an key role in the resolution of this final Golden Age Justice Society of America story. Where was this energy for the past decade? And Joe Kubert sends Johnny Peril to Mars. Shut up, Johnny Peril. Nobody asked you to come.
Who are you? We're fans. I was raised to love one thing, and I've got nothing to listen to.
Nothing will stand in our way. I will edit what you started.
There were podcasts about what happened. It's true. All of it.
I am Tony. I am Shane Klong.
Hey, this is Brian, aka Breakdown.
This is Derek WC.
Hey, it's Mike Thunderwing.
Hey, this is Justin Grimwood.
Secret Brothers. For the fans and by the fans. They're real. The Fan Holes Podcast. It's calling to you. Just let it in. Weekly content on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and fanholespodcast.blogspot.com.
Thanks go out to the 108th Sage, 1001 Johnny, who commented, is there a playlist for these 1D episodes on YouTube? And as of tonight, there's a few episodes that are missing. Probably there's some sort of a rights issue with music usage or something. I'll probably look into that in the future, but the majority of the episodes are now in a playlist. 1995, ZMCM, Aaron Henley, Bill Scurry, Dr. Ange, Ask What Would Wonder Woman Do, Between the Pages, Billets by Vinyl, Carlos Fope, Chris Dunford, Coffee and Comics, Dave's Comic Heroes blog, The Steel Snyder Cut, Michael Jackson, D. Lonergan, Dr. Pop Culture, Ed Moore at Teal Productions, Alyssa McCausland, Guido A. Sanchez is now on BlueSky.app, History of Comics on Film, Ian Gagal, Jim Imbruglia, Julia Raul, who tweeted, I have an issue from the 100-page specials of Wonder Woman, Supergirl, and Batwoman World's Finest. I mostly bought these when I was super hyped for Wonder Woman after the first movie. I was trying to keep up with whatever the Rebirth revamp at the time and reread the other comics. King Size Comics Giant Size Fun Podcast, Lisa Molina Heath, Martin Gray, who added Thanks, Sounds Fun, Min, Nate Devon, Sanford Mason Atkinson, The Phil Factor, Priscilla Petra, Randy Caldwell, Resurrections and Adam Warlock and Thanos Podcast, Richard Field, Satin Tights Wonder Woman Podcast, Siskoid, Stefano Jr., Terrence Castonguay, Trucker Talk, Warlord Worlds, Wayne Burrows, Western Mass Wonder Woman, Wonder Boy TV, Wonder Woman Warrior for Peace Podcast, Xenozoic Xenophiles, Zachary Diamond, and Zozo. Wonder Woman is the copyright of DC Comics Entertainment. This is a non-profit fan-produced podcast. No infringement of any copyrights are intended, and where copyrighted material appears, it is believed protected under fair use. If you enjoy the show, please feel free to leave a comment on the Diana Prince is the New Wonder Woman blog, the Rolled Spine podcast blog. Write to me at emailofdiabolu@yahoo.com, featuring 2 underscores, or just hit me up on Twitter at Commander Blanks or at Rolled Spine. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful week.